When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we see. No, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, oh, stand by me. Oh, now stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, oh, stand by me. Oh, now stand by me. Stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, oh, stand by me. Oh, now stand by me. Stand by me. Thank you.
Hi, I want to welcome everyone to this virtual memorial service. We're coming together to honor our unstably housed neighbors and community members who lost their lives this year. My name is Natalie Interiano. I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Care for the Homeless, and I will be your MC for this evening. Our colleague will be sharing the program in the chat, so please take a look at that if you want to follow along. Before we get started, I want to point out a few things. You will have the opportunity, although we collect the names before this, if we did not get to that, or if you happen to remember somebody who passed away, you'll have the opportunity to add names of any community members that passed away and have not been submitted prior to the service to be included in the readings. So we welcome you to submit those names in the chat function, and they're going to be read towards the end. Also in the chat, we're going to be sharing some resources as the program continues. Feel free to interact via the chat, or you can also use the reaction function on the bottom right of your screen. If you know how to use Zoom, you'll see the reaction buttons down there. You can use those throughout the program. Also, feel free to introduce yourselves right now. Thank you all for joining us. You can use the chat to introduce to each other or say hi to each other. And now we're going to get started. So I'd like to introduce a member of both the Board of Directors and the Consumer Advisory Board here at Care for the Homeless, Mr. Philip Maelbranche, who's going to be providing some opening remarks.
Good evening. I'm Philip Maelbranche, and I would like to welcome you to the 2021 Homeless Persons Memorial Observance. Each year around the winter solstice, we come together to remember our neighbors who died in the past year without stable housing or from the trauma of unstable housing. We gather the names from service providers, advocates, peers, and community members, and shortly we will recite each name as we virtually light a candle in their memory. I would like to acknowledge our partners at Urban Pathways. We also recognize the many allies participating in our program tonight as readers and giving eulogies, and our great client advocates who have worked so hard to put together a meaningful observance. We are made stronger through our effort and commitment. We know that homelessness hampers the quality of life and dignity of people, and in the end robs people of their health. We know that chronic homelessness, and especially unsheltered chronic homelessness, reduces life expectancy by 30 or more years. These are the terrible health disparities visited upon people just because they're poor and without stable housing. We gather for this memorial for two key reasons. First, for the sad and solemn recognition that we've lost hundreds of our neighbors in New York City again this year. We pay tribute to these individuals and acknowledge their lives by reciting their names and lighting a candle that signifies a memory that will live on and burn brightly. Second, we participate in this memorial to hold ourselves accountable. It is our belief that none of the people we recognize tonight died because of a personal failure. We believe they died because the system designed to help them failed. Our hope is that each of us will recommit to raising our voices for the most marginalized, understanding that homelessness is a public health crisis that we are able to end. We hope that the list of names we recite next year will be much shorter and that we will be closer to realizing the human right to health care and housing for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I'd now like to invite our partner, who's a member of the Board of Directors at Urban Pathways, Mr. Adam Heft, to also provide some remarks.
Good evening. I'm Adam Heft, a member of the Executive Committee of Urban Pathways Board of Directors. It's an honor to be joining you for this important remembrance on Homeless Persons Memorial Day. Thank you, Mr. Maelbranche, and our partners at Care for the Homeless, our consumer advocates, my fellow board members, and the staff at Urban Pathways who provide remarkable care and compassion for the people they serve each and every day. I'd also like to thank Assemblymember Rosenthal for joining us, for her relentless advocacy to support our neighbors in need and her work to put an end to homelessness in New York. We gather tonight to honor nearly 400 New Yorkers who passed away this year while unstably housed or following the negative effects of having been homeless. We take pause tonight to honor their memories and to shine a light on their deaths. We must also pause to ask ourselves why. Why did our city lose hundreds of New Yorkers to the tragedy of homelessness this year? How can we stop this from happening again? We're at a turning point in the history of our great city. We're finding a new normal. We have a new administration taking office. There is now an opportunity to move forward and make our city a city where a home is available and affordable for everyone, and where a home is a right and not a privilege. We can move towards a city with shared empathy instead of disdain for our neighbors who are struggling. We can improve our services so that everyone, no matter where you live, can access quality, affordable, and culturally competent mental and medical health care. We have the tools to make this happen. We know what works. Safe havens for our neighbors to transition from street homelessness, supportive housing for those who need extra help to live independently, apartments available for extremely low-income households, and affordable housing where those in need pay no more than 30% of their income. We need to expand these tools so that they are available to all who need them. While we mourn those who we lost tonight, we remain hopeful, and we can act now so that next year there will be far fewer people to remember. The New Yorkers whose names will be read here tonight and those whose names we may not know all mattered and all will be missed. Thank you again for joining us. We hope you find this to be a meaningful evening.
Thank you, Adam, and our partners at Urban Pathways. It's now my pleasure to introduce a special guest, a longtime public servant. She has represented the 67th District in Manhattan as a member of the New York State Assembly since 2006. Currently serving as chair of the Committee on Social Services, she is an important ally in the greater mission to ensure supportive services are accessible to all New Yorkers. And we are grateful to have her fighting for issues important to our in-house neighbors up in Albany. Please join me in welcoming our friend, Assemblymember Linda B. Rosenthal.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Assembly Member Linda B. Rosenthal. I represent the 67th Assembly District, which includes the Upper West Side and parts of Hell's Kitchen. And as Natalie said, I'm Chair of the Committee on Social Services in the Assembly. I'm really honored to join such great advocates from Care for the Homeless and Urban Pathways, along with all the other allies, for tonight's Homeless Persons Memorial Day ceremony, honoring the more than 370 New Yorkers that we've lost this year. According to the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, as many as 91,271 individuals in New York State were experiencing homelessness on any given day as of January 2020, including many thousands of children. And if those numbers weren't astounding enough, we know that in the pandemic, which began shortly after those numbers were collected, more and more people became homeless. Just a few days ago, I held a Social Services Committee hearing to examine the issue of homelessness in New York State. We heard from nearly 30 witnesses about the need for additional units of housing, the need for greater funding of supportive housing, increases to voucher amounts, and many more measures that will help lift people out of poverty and ensure that they have access to safe and stable housing. Last week, we earned a major victory when the governor signed legislation I sponsored, raising the family homelessness and eviction prevention supplement to 100% of fair market rent. That will ensure more families, as well as survivors of domestic violence, are able to find suitable housing and avoid being on the street or in shelter. It's estimated approximately 2,300 additional families will be able to access housing and pay the rent. I mean, the fact that this has been signed and that it's so momentous points to how far behind we lag as a state and how much more we have to give, how much more we have to do. We know that thousands of people will be sleeping in shelters here in New York City. And this year, so many people have died without a home, and I think it's the largest number of names collected in a single year by Urban Pathways and Care for the Homeless. We know that each of these individuals was somebody's child, somebody's parent, somebody's friend, somebody's relative. Each of them had their own story, their own hopes, and their own dreams. And for some of the people we are here remembering, this is the only memorialization they will receive. And it's important that we gather here to do just that. You know, for many, the concept of homelessness is a statistic, is a number, is a word. But we know they are people like you and me. They didn't ask to be put in that situation, but there they are. And it's on us to help them. They are not a burden. They are neighbors, members of our communities, and we need to do a much better job in supporting them. Know that state and local governments can do their part, but we need to get much more active. We can't ignore the plight of so many individuals as government has. So I am here. I am a partner in the struggle, and I'm grateful for all the work all of you do around the state, day in and day out, to help everyone at risk and experiencing homelessness. And I thank you for inviting me to this moving event and for all of your work.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member. We're honored to have you join us this evening. Now I'd like to invite Pastor Carl Petrus. He's the director at Life Experience and Faith Sharing Associates, a friend and ally, join us for a reflection.
Good evening, everybody. I want to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of this occasion. We at LEFSA, we provide empowerment, and we provide different tools for street homeless as well as those that are formerly homeless in our communities. And I think that things like this that we're having tonight are important because a lot of times people who are without shelter, people who don't have a place of their own, a lot of times they're made to feel, in most cases, they're made to feel less of a person, made to feel like they're non-existent. And it's something that I have an opportunity to see and to deal with on a day-to-day basis. What can we do with what we have? What can we do as a community to be better engaged with those that are less fortunate, to help this problem that we all know exists? I was looking in the Bible, and in Matthew, the 25th chapter, Jesus is speaking, and he says, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. And later on in that same chapter, they said, well, when, Lord, when were you naked and we didn't clothe you? And when were you hungry and we didn't feed you? And he said, what you did not do for the least of these, you did not do for me. And I think the first thing that needs to happen as a community is we need to change our perspective of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Look at a person on the street, no matter what condition they might be in. Look at them as Christ. Look at them as a person that has feeling, that is flesh and blood. Look at them as you're helping out the actual Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, just as the text says. And there's nothing major, something simple. Hello. You would be surprised how much speaking to them, knowing their names. If you have something, give something to eat. Join up with an organization that is providing and doing things for the homeless. We at the church, we run drives all the time, sock drives, feminine product drives, and we give those to people and organizations that can distribute them if we can't distribute them ourselves. We have partnered, my church has partnered with Life Experience and Faith Sharing, and we're going out, as a matter of fact, Saturday to provide meals for at least 100 people, hot meals. I mean, so there are different things that we can do as a community to recognize this problem and to assist in this problem on a one-on-one basis, but we can also come together as a community and stand and fight for legislature and different things that can be provided for the homeless. A lot of times we tend to take things for granted, the things and the luxuries that we have on a day-to-day basis, but there is somebody out there who is less fortunate. There's somebody out there who doesn't have access to everything that we have access to. And I will tell you, you can't recognize it. It's not like it used to be where you can just look at a person and tell nowadays, especially with what has happened since the pandemic. We go out on the streets a lot and we see people who are hungry and need of food, but you can't tell by what they're wearing. You can't tell by the way they're dressed, but you can look into their eyes and that heartfelt God bless you and thank you, because they had no idea where their next meal was coming from. So we can do different things as a community. Don't take anything for granted. We can do things on the individual level, and we can also do things coming together as a unit and do drives. We can take collections and donate them to organizations and those that are in the streets and in the trenches, because it really makes a difference. And I believe if we can do those things, we can further the life of others. We are talking about 400 people who lost their lives. And as was previously stated, that's, I think, the highest number that I think we've seen within a year. That can be curbed by simply providing something to eat, by simply, you'd be surprised how far a pair of socks goes. You'd be surprised how far a sandwich goes. You'd be surprised how much acknowledging a person's existence goes. And then through that, you establish a relationship, and it gives you the opportunity to further help by providing other resources, medical care, or sending them somewhere, or possibly, redirecting them to maybe a rehabilitation center or things like that that could possibly prolong life. So what do we want to do as a community? I'm hoping that we can really grasp and take hold of Matthew 25 and really look at a person, no matter what state they're in, and see Jesus in that person. And then we can be able to provide, necessary help to the best of our ability through seeing that person as Christ. Thank you for having me. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity to be here in such a heartfelt occasion.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Pastor Carl, for sharing those words with us. This year, we put out a call for poems or short stories to our community to include in the memorial, and we're humbled by the response we received from those that chose to share their words with us. The poem we're about to share was written and will be read by Mr. Will Woods, who is a consumer advocate at Urban Pathways.
My heart is heavy and my soul weeps, pure anger and frustration, mired in futility, so tired of senseless loss. There is no greater desire than one's will to live, so it hurts more when life is lost. A double-edged blade piercing the veil of our own mortality. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow does indeed creep on in its petty pace, but time is immemorial. Life is not. Such infinitely complex yet futile beings we are, with our expiration date issued at birth, with our taking our next breath for granted, and our forgetting that eyes closed in the bliss of sleep can only be reopened by God's grace. Blessed be those who riseth on the day, and blessed be those who are cradled in the bosom of his memory. Though saddened by loss, the heart is soothed, knowing that a soul has been freed from this mortal coil to his eternal rest. So goodbye, mis gentes. Good luck. If you lose your way on this new journey, try to remember it's the first star to the right and straight on till morning.
Thank you so much for that. Well, that was incredible. So now we're going to be joined by Mr. Matt LiVigni. He's going to be singing a rendition of Turn, Turn, Turn. Matt, go ahead and please join us.
Hi, thanks, Natalie. Can everyone hear me? Just maybe a
We
thumb
can,
up.
yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. So I was here last year and it was so beautiful, and I was asked to join again, and I'm so honored. And everyone who's spoken so far, it's been so beautiful. And that last poem was incredible. So I hope I can find my way in this and give back to this memorial, just like everyone else has been. This song, I don't know if anyone knows Turn, Turn, Turn. It's a song that was written by Pete Seeger, and it's straight from a section of Ecclesiastes. There's some direct quotes, and it's really a song about there being a time and place for everything. And he really turned the song into a song of hope for a more peaceful future, and I think everyone really getting what they need. And so I thought it was really appropriate. So without further ado, I'll start. Can everyone hear my guitar? Sorry to ask.
Yes.
It. Okay, great.
All good,
No,
yeah,
Zoom.
thank you.
It's tough. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn. A time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow. A time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
Thank you, Matt. That was beautiful. All right, so before we begin the reading of the names, Ms. Fulvia Frazier, who's a consumer advocate and member of the Board of Directors at Care for the Homeless, will be providing a reflection in Spanish. So we can have you come on, Ms. Fulvia.
Thank you. You hear me?
We can, yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Hola. Nos reunimos para reconocer a nuestros vecinos que fallecieron estos últimos meses en la vivienda, sin una vivienda estable. En esta, la ciudad más grande, la más rica en los Estados Unidos, con una de las poblaciones más grandes de personas y familias sin hogar. Somos testigos de la vida de las personas que murieron sin hogar este año. Reconocemos a estas personas y reconocemos sus vidas leyendo sus nombres. Mi esperanza es que la lista de nombres que leemos reciba el reconocimiento que merecen. Mi deseo es que la lista se acorte cada año. Mi mayor esperanza es que esto sea un testimonio de la importancia vital que tiene un hogar estable para la salud, el bienestar y la seguridad de todas las personas a través de todas las estadísticas sobre personas sin hogar. Es fácil olvidar que las cifras corresponden a personas reales con vidas y familias. Debemos reconocer sus vidas y debemos recordar por qué murieron. Now, we will now begin the reading of names. We are joined by client advocates, service providers, and community members who will read the names of individuals who passed away while experiencing or as a result of having experienced homelessness in 2021. We'll also have, we also have several community members providing eulogies for those we have lost. Their names will be projected on the screen and virtual candles will be lit in their honor. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Fraser. As she mentioned, now will we begin the name reading. You will notice that there will be duplicates of certain names. Each person, whether full name, first name, or nickname, is a different person. And we will take the opportunity to recognize them all by saying their name out loud and lighting a virtual candle in their honor. So to start us off, we're going to begin with Fred Schack, the CEO of Urban Pathways.
AC, AP, Abdul Rahman, Adam Campbell, Adela G, Alkeem Leo, Albert B, Alberto M, Alaja, Alexander Winchester, Alisa, Alray Sun, Alucina Torre, Amber, Andrea,
Now we'll have Mr. Douglas Green from Lantern Community Services will be providing a eulogy for Adela G and Eliza H.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be providing eulogy for our participants who are no longer with us, Adela and Eliza. So I'm going to start with Adela. Adela, she was a determined, goal-oriented, and very inquisitive person. Adela cared deeply for her family and more so devoted to her grandchildren. Through our many encounters, Adela was adamant on providing a brighter future for herself and loved ones through obtaining her degree and pursuing cosmetology. Adela would go out of her way to help everyone she encountered, whether it be family or program staff. Adela's legacy of positivity and light will continue to be carried on through her loved ones. Eliza. Eliza could always be found to be positive in any situation, whether good or bad. Despite any obstacles or challenges, Eliza always remained to be true to herself. Eliza considered herself to be blessed that she had family and friends who truly cared for her and always seemed to be in awe of the continued support and love they had for her in every situation, whether good or bad. Eliza will continue to live on in each of her friends, family, and the many others she encountered in her lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Now we have Ms. Sabrina Huggins from Case Manager Urban Pathways, who's going to be providing a eulogy for Alberto M.
Hello, everyone. Give me 1 second. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us.
Right. Mr. Alberto Marin was born on November 9th, 1962, and left us on April 19th of 2021. So I remember Mr. Marin as being a very quiet man, and he always kept to himself. Mr. Marin communicated with a very soft-spoken tone, and he was very calm and kind to workers and fellow residents alike. Mr. Marin described being born and raised in Puerto Rico and having a large family with lots of uncles that helped him as he grew up. Mr. Marin very rarely spoke about his own family. He did mention that his children were adults. Mr. Marin was always casually dressed and would always wear a black and white classic Puma on his feet. His clothing was always pressed and neatly coordinated. Mr. Marin was a pleasure to work with because he always made his own appointments and kept them. He was very independent and was getting ready to transition to permanent housing before he passed. He will be missed.
Thank you, Sabrina.
You're welcome.
Now we'll have Ms. Abigail D. from Care for the Homeless.
Andrew, Angel, Ontario Watts, Anthony Hansen, Antonio Battle, Arnold Williams, Arthur Nowaski, Barbara Cleckley, Benedicto, Benjamin, Bertie Alston, Betty C., Bob Haken, Bobby B., Bobby Fields, Brandon,
Thank you, Gail. So we had a eulogy submitted by a gentleman named Andre P. He was not able to join us today, so I'll make sure to read the eulogy for him. Arnold was a tall guy from Trinidad, lived where I lived. Very kind, said little, never complained. When the pandemic came, everything was closed. The shelter still made us go outside for the day, even in winter. One cold day, standing under a scaffold next to a pile of snow, he pointed me to hot Chinese pork buns. Didn't want one for himself. In time, we both moved to the other place that had no beds, but guaranteed chairs, no lottery. Arnold got very skinny, didn't eat much, just sat slumped in his chair. One evening, I sat close to him till I moved to the other side. The next morning, 2 ambulances came, pumped chest, left empty-handed. A cop brought a form to fill out. Arnold was dead. Now if we can have Miss Lily Bohan from Valley Lodge join us.
It's my honor to read these names. Brittany, Bruce, Camellia, Capucine Beckles, Carl Logan, Carl Stein, Carlos Guirachoca, Carol Lucas, Casio, Cedric, Charlene Devonish, Charles Gelpy, Charles Ward, Chelsea Thomas, Christina, Christophe, Christopher, Claudine.
Now we can have Richard Jarrett from Urban Pathways.
Curtis M., D. White, Daniel Beasley, Daniel Cooper Kimmery, Daniela Beasley, Daniela Cooper, Daniela Morris, Doreen Mayers, Doreen Perna, Deran W., David, Barbara Pickett, Delphina Vesaria, Delando Garo, Delnella Masters, Dennis O'Leary.
Thank you, Richard. Now we're going to have a eulogy in memory of those individuals who were street homeless and were victims of violence. And that would be given by Mr. Shams de Baron.
Greetings, everybody. So, well, let me say something first. As someone who, one of the main reasons that made me seek to change things in the shelter is seeing people who would die in shelters. I was street homeless, and I know how dangerous it is, especially in extreme weather. But I do want to honor one of my good friends from the Lucerne Hotel, who was at the Lucerne Hotel, Manny, who unexpectedly passed away while we were there. And the ironic thing is not being able to honor him in any type of way, not being able to access any type of service for the ability for us to grieve properly. And we found ways to memorialize him and others that have passed away, but it was just difficult. And then the thought that he was unable, or we all were unable to contact his family, him being someone from a different country and in the city basically alone, very productive member of the community, of the city, worked very hard working despite the pandemic. And it really bothered me. But one of the main reasons why I began to seek the change was because I had this great fear of dying homeless, whether in the streets or in a shelter, and being so unknown. And as a person who almost died from COVID in 2020, my biggest fear was just to die alone and not be remembered or honored or memorialized properly. So I thank you all for this and appreciate it. Now, there is no New Yorker more vulnerable than the New Yorker sleeping rough on the street, whether sleeping on a bench or a sidewalk, in a park or in a subway car. These New Yorkers are left vulnerable to the elements. I was one of them. The rain, wind, and snow that sweep through our city are harrowing for those experiencing street homelessness. Code red and cold blue, called when the temperature spikes or drops to extreme levels, degrees, are especially dangerous days and nights. Tonight, we honor our brothers and sisters lost to the harsh effects of sleeping, exposed to the elements. Our neighbors experiencing street homelessness are also left extremely exposed to violence. When we talk about street homelessness, we're also talking about those who are on the trains and the subways and in other dwellings where we may go to seek shelters. I speak of those on the trains because I've learned recently that there was something called mole people that literally go down into the tracks to find shelter during extreme weather conditions and just make a home there. Tonight, we honor and remember all homeless New Yorkers lost to violent attacks. We remember a 40-year-old man and a 44-year-old woman killed in knife attacks on the A train on February 13th. Both victims are unknown. We remember an unidentified man who was cruelly set ablaze while he slept in the stairwell of a building on the Lower East Side on November 5th. We remember Akeem Lonnie, a talented soccer player and member of Street Soccer USA, who was stabbed while he slept on a 2 train on November 21st. And I want to also acknowledge all of those who are struggling with addiction and mental illness and other ailments, some just physical disabilities, who are losing their lives because their access to services are not there in the way that they should be, whether in the streets or in these shelters, where most those that are congregate settings are very dangerous and life-threatening and jeopardize the ability for a person to live a healthy life. And so many deaths are lost simply because the city and the state and throughout the country, those of us that are extremely vulnerable are not able to access the type of services that could stabilize us and help us to be healthy. There is no greater sadness than preventable deaths of our neighbors living on the streets. We are told it is no crime to be poor. Yet every year, more people, poor people without housing, are victims of violent trauma for no apparent reason other than homelessness and poverty. And so we mourn these individuals and mourn the circumstances that so unnecessarily robs them of their lives. May next year bring an end to street homelessness, so we do not need to honor these preventable deaths next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Shams. Now we have Mr. Garrett McMahon from Care for the Homeless. You're still muted, Garrett.
Yes.
There you are.
Excuse my tardiness. Derek. Derek D. Derek. Devon. Demetrius. Dirk Kempstead. Dwight Fossum. E. Rivera. Edna. Edna Jimenez. Eduardo Silvanotti. Edwin Della Virginia. Edwin Alvarez. Edwin Martinez. Edwin Oblight. Ephraim. May all rest in peace.
Now we have Samuel Winfrey from Coalition for the Homeless.
Eliza H. Emily. Eric Centron. Eric. Erica. Aaron. Esteban Espinosa. Eugene M. Eugenio Rodriguez. F.O. Farad Mazouk. Florence Enrique. Florencio Castillo. Frank Ambert. Freddie Schneider. G.M. Gabriella Foster.
Now, if we can have Ms. Kayla May Palmer from Lantern Community Services, who will be providing a eulogy for Mr. Farid Marzouk.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I would like to believe that when we come to the end of our lives, we are reborn again, able to live, laugh, and love, but not without remembering the lessons learned. Mr. Marzouk was kind in spirit, humorous, and supportive. During his time with Lantern, he did not only support staff, providing words of encouragement during long days, but also difficult moments. He was inquisitive, always willing to learn more, adventure through the community, and do anything needed to improve his overall quality of life. He was the proudest of his two daughters, named Naima Tucker and Sade Marzouk. At every opportunity, he would sing their praises and say, he could not wait for me to meet them. He is survived by several siblings, cousins, and friends. Although he is no longer with us, his spirit lives on through everyone who had the opportunity to meet him. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kayla. We can have Dave George for Urban Pathways, please.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, great. I'm so honored to be here tonight, and I'm definitely sad at the moment, but very, very glad to be a part of this memorial service. Okay. Gary Claude. Gary Comstock. Gary W. George. George A. George Sage. Georgia Petulis. Geraldo. German. Giat Zerdias. Glenda. Gregory. Girolamo Marino. Harry. Hustle. Hector Kowaldo. I'm sorry about that. Henry. Heriberto Mendez. Sorry for messing those few names up. I'm sorry.
Not a problem, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we have Mr. Surjit Chana from Care for the Homeless.
It's my honor to read these 17 names. Herman Flores. Howard. Halim Aiken. Igor. Isaac Middleton. Ishmael. Isa. Ivan Rodriguez. Jay Alston. Jay Loisick. Jack Carter. Jacqueline Waite Knight. Jafet. Jamel Martinez. James. James W. Jane Doe.
Thank you, Surjit. And now we have Mr. George Nashak. He's the CEO of Care for the Homeless, who's going to be providing a eulogy for John and Jane Doe.
One reason we observe Homeless Persons Memorial Day each year is to acknowledge those who would not otherwise be acknowledged, to name those who would not otherwise be named. As sobering as it is to name so many people this evening, it is even sadder to know that some of the people who passed away on the streets of New York City this past year died anonymously. To memorialize people whose names we don't know, we include on our list the names John Doe and Jane Doe. Not only were their lives shortened and made harsh by poverty and homelessness, but these people also passed away without even the dignity of having us know their names. If we were to read the names Jane Doe or John Doe for each person whose name we don't know, our list would be far longer. Homelessness needlessly robbed these men and women of their housing, their health, their dignity, and in the end, even of their names. We pause to think of these people today and to remember and acknowledge them. We know each of them had a life before homelessness. They were sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers. There is perhaps no greater sorrow than burying someone with their identity unknown. We pause this evening to remember them and commit ourselves to work to end the indignity that was visited upon them from impacting others. We need not know their names to know their lives were valuable and had meaning. May they rest in peace.
Thank you, George. We can have Eric Lee from Homeless Services United.
Good evening. Thank you for the honor of allowing me to read these names tonight in remembrance. Jeanette Feliciano, Jeffrey S., Jennifer Gonzalez, Jermaine J., Jermel Tarrant, Jerome Drayton, Jesse Edmonds, Jesus, Jimmy, Johanna, Joanne G., Joel, John, John Abel, John Doe, John Sands, John W.
Thank you, Eric. We now have Ms. Natasha Hutchinson, who's a case manager at Urban Pathways, who's going to be providing a eulogy for Jeffrey S.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. Jeffrey was born on November 10th, 1955 in the Bronx. He was raised by both parents and has a younger brother whom he recently reunited with after years of no communication. Jeffrey left school in the 12th grade, but obtained his GED before joining the Marines. However, he received an honorable discharge for unknown medical reasons. Jeffrey was incarcerated for several years and became homeless upon his release from prison. Jeffrey was referred to Urban Pathways for supportive housing through a veterans shelter. During his time at Urban Pathways, Jeffrey participated in our on-site groups, kept his apartment clean, always paid his rent on time, and was always on time to meet with his case manager for supportive case management purposes. It was a pleasure working with Jeffrey, as he was always on time for his sessions with me and provided me with any documents that were requested from him. Jeffrey always greeted staff in a kind and pleasant manner, and upon leaving the office, he would always say, "Bless the day." Jeffrey was a good tenant and will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Now we have Ms. Tej Singh from Care for the Homeless. And it's *6, Ms. Tej. Tage, are you able to join us? Okay, I'll read these names. Johnny Whitting, Jonathan, Jordan, Jorge, Jose, Jose Fernandez, Jose Montalvo, Jose Suarez Enrique, Joseph, Joseph Reiger, Juan, Judith Patel, Julio, Julius, Julius A, Justin, Kaisim, Karen. Now we can have Mr. Will Woods from Urban Pathways.
Quran, Asim, Kathy Ann Grant, Kazi Hussein, Kelly, Kenneth, Kevin O'Keefe, Kim, Kiriam C, Kyle, Laki, Lamont, Lance Margolin, Leon Street, Leonard C, Leonardo, Leroy Breland.
Thank you, Will. And we can have Miss EJ, who is going to be providing a eulogy for those we've lost to COVID-19.
Good evening, everyone. 2021 marks a full year of life with the COVID-19 virus. Our neighbors experiencing housing instability are left especially vulnerable and exposed to COVID-19 without a space to call their own and without the option to stay home. COVID-19 has left many people around the world feeling the effects of trauma and isolation. Our homeless neighbors, already living with the trauma of life without stable housing, are especially exposed to the trauma of COVID-19's impact. Many have been left without the mental health services they need, or are contending with a newly virtual world without the proper tools to access it. For some, this overwhelming trauma and hardship was just too much to bear. We honor them tonight. Our unhoused community members already contend with concerns for their safety, health, and well-being. The virus compounds these concerns, creating another looming yet invisible threat. It makes the search for housing ever more pressing and ever more difficult in a market that takes so little mercy on the poor. Sadly, some of our community members were lost to COVID-19 before finding housing, a place to call home. We honor them tonight. While we may never know how many individuals experiencing homelessness have been lost to COVID-19 and its effects, let us honor them now and hold them in our hearts always.
Thank you, Ms. EJ. Can we have Dr. Deborah Bernstein from the Institute for Family Health join us?
Lilith Ivory, Linton Pierre, Lisa, Lloyd, Lowell, Lori, Louis, Luis, Lukash Ruchik, Maybell Powell, Maggie Pleasant, Malcon, Marcin Dabrowski, Marcos, Marianne Friedman Foote, Maria, Mark,
Thank you. Can we have a Lang Tenzer from Care for the Homeless?
may their memory be a blessing.
Thank you, Doctor.
Do you hear me?
We do, thank you.
Okay. Mark R. Martin. Mary. Mary Magdalene. Mary S. Master M. Matilda de Jesus. Murillo Garcia. Niece Jones. Merlin Cunningham. Michael. Michael Claw. Michael Winters. Miguel. Miriam Belvin. Morphy. Muniram Drew Persad. N. Lavan. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor Belushi from Urban Pathways. Victor, are you able to come on? *6 if you're on the phone. Okay,
Am I on?
there you are, yes. Please continue.
Thank you. Nazarin Baylock. Nelson Romero. Nicholas Remy Matro Matthews. Nicholas Striss. Nick Niraj. Noel O. Rosero Jr. Oba Purdue. Oliver R. Aura T. Orlando. Oscar. Oscar. P.F. Pamela. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Laura Moshu from the Supportive Housing Network of New York. Laura, are you able to join us?
Parmenon. Patricia Summers. Paul. Paul Jensen. Powell Felicianchik. Pedro. Pedro Barrios. Pedro R. Perla Baker. Perry Thompson. Peter, R.A., Radam Tirado, Raphael A. Ortiz, Ralph, Ram, Ramnath Sasha Puranday. Thank you for the honor of reading these names tonight.
Thank you for joining us, Laura. Now we're going to be providing a eulogy for those that we've lost to substance use. It was going to be given by Dr. Andrea Littleton, but she was unable to join us. And so we're going to have Susanna Post from Urban Pathways deliver the eulogy.
As a community focused on mitigating the effects of addiction, we want to take the time to remember our loved ones who we have lost to this disease. We know it can be painful to think about our lost brothers and sisters, but we want their stories to touch the lives of others who are struggling now. Addiction is a disease, and together we can treat and prevent it. Our work is not finished until our communities and our families are no longer struggling with the grave costs of this illness. For those who have faced that struggle, we mourn and remember them today. We also mourn the failure of our systems to meet the needs of our neighbors. To those we have lost, your struggle has become our own. We will not idly stand by as more lives are needlessly lost. We will not accept that suffering in silence. In memory of those lost to addiction, in memory of loved ones who never said goodbye, in memory of all those affected by their sudden loss, in memory of those we continue to lose tragically every day. As we remember those who struggled and passed before us, our hope is not just that they not be forgotten. Our hope is that all year long their struggle be remembered, and that our city and our country put into action proven solutions to this public health crisis.
Thank you, Susanna. Now we're going to have Nick O'Toole from Urban Pathways.
Ramon, Ravi Sundar, Raymond L, Reggie, Renford Nelson, Ricardo, Richard Grella, Ricky, Reese, Robert, Rodney Borders, Ronald, Rennell McDuffie's, Ronnie Jackson, Rosa, Samuel Smith,
Thank you, Nick. And now we have Mr. Ron Lawson from Care for the Homeless.
Sandy, Santos, Sean, Shahid, Sanita, Cheryl, Sigrid Achele, Sylvia, Sonia L, Stanley, Stefano Calaraco, Stephanie, Susanna, Tabitha, Takim.
Thank you, Ron. And Nancy Southwell from Urban Pathways.
Tamara Silblad, Tammy Wiley, Theodore Mitchell, Timothy Denson, Timothy Minerve, Coder C, Todd, Tony Ragland, Trenton, Troy, Tyrone Jackson, Val, Vanessa, Victor, VJ.
Thank you, Nancy. Now we're going to have a eulogy for Theodore Mitchell that was submitted by Mr. Peter Melvin, who's a consumer advocate at Project Renewal. He was unable to join us tonight, so I will be reading the eulogy. Theodore worked for HRA in New York City in construction, road building in Kansas, and demolition in Tribeca. He also volunteered for years at St. Francis Xavier Church and behind the scenes setting up the welcome table and volunteer support at Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church, United Church of Christ. He was also a member and follower of house music for decades and a member of house music family. Among his most memorable talents was his ability to make everyone laugh and even reach people in such a way that anger could turn into laughter and relief. A dedicated family man, he is survived by his son Josh, his 3 younger sisters, several uncles, nieces, great-nieces, nephews, and cousins to whom he had been caregiver and protector. He will be missed by all. He rests with his mom, which he made well known as his desired final resting place. And we can have Ms. Kathy Sharp from Care for the Homeless.
Good evening. Vincenzo Capaldo. Wanda. Warren. Wendy. Whitney Kuhn. Will. William. William Lewis. William Scott. Willie. Xenia Matut. Yarden Silviera. Yatima Brown. Yosthra. Zach. Zuleika Cordero.
Thank you, Kathy. We're not going to have Ms. Nicole McVinoa. She's a policy director, Urban Pathways. She's going to read the names of the individuals that were added to the registration portal this week. She's also going to be reciting any names that were added to the chat during the program.
Ajen Moore, Benjamin Sheem, Deborah Alexander, Dean Johnson, Jessica Perzulaki, Lewis Miller, Lloyd McFadden, Manny, Matthews McLemore, Myron Taxi Labeja Roundtree, Oriarero Odiase, Ralph Boots, Richard Perro, Robert Andrews, Roy Joyner, Tabitha Brown, William Burton, William Garcia, Willie Williams, Eva McMillan, Kirby Jean, Carol Ann Travell.
Thank you, Nicole. May they rest in peace. I'd now like to invite Matt LiVigni to join us on screen to sing a song in memory of those that we have lost. The song will be followed by closing remarks by our consumer advocate, Mr. Scott McDonald.
Okay. Wow. So moving. It's hard to follow all that up. Can everyone, I'm muted? Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you, Matt.
Sorry, I always have to ask because I don't want to
No problem.
into the void. So I'm gonna sing a song that I sang last year called "All of My Memories." It's by John Denver, and I chose this song last year when I was invited to play because it talks about finding a place to call home. And I think the character in the song has kind of been beaten down and roughed up, and is envisioning a place where they want to go, where they feel comfortable living out the rest of their days. And I think not only for people whose names have been read all night, but I think like everyone in the world, it's so relatable, and understanding that helps you have empathy for what's going on in the streets and like in shelters, and hopefully everyone coming together to help bring an end to that and find housing and a home for everyone. So all of my memories lay in the life of the highway. All of my nights in old motels and sleeping alone. All of my days on the road with no one beside me. All of my dreams of a place that I can call home. Somewhere in the shade, near the sound of a sweet singing river. Somewhere in the sun, where the mountains make love to the sky. Somewhere to build me a faith, a farm and a family. Somewhere to grow older, and somewhere a reason to try. 'Cause I'm tired of big cities, I'm so tired of big city ways. Scratching off sunset and walking around in the maze. Some sweet taxi dancer trying to save me from being alone. Oh, it's much worse than lonely when there's no place I really belong. I wanna go home. I'm leaving this city life. In my mind, I'm flying away. I'm leaving tomorrow and all of my old yesterdays. I'm leaving the trash cans, the bright lights of telephone lines. I'm leaving my sorrows and all of my memories behind. I'll see what I'll find. Somewhere in the shade, near the sound of a sweet singing river, somewhere in the sun, where the mountains make love to the sky, somewhere to build me a faith, a farm and a family, somewhere to grow older, and somewhere a reason to try, somewhere to grow older, somewhere to lay down and die. Somewhere to grow older, and somewhere a reason to try.
Thank you so much, Matt. All right, we're so grateful to our client leaders and client advocates, board members, program staff, service providers, community members, and musicians who all generously contributed their time this evening. This is a very grassroots effort for us, so a very special thanks to everyone who helped us gather these names so that we can provide a proper memorial for these individuals. And thank you to all for attending and helping us honor the lives of every person we lost this year. I'd now like to invite Mr. Scott McDonald, a consumer advocate at Urban Pathways, to provide us with some closing remarks.
Natalie, thank you. As we bring the 2021 Homeless Persons Memorial to a close this evening, I'd like to pause for a moment to offer my sincere thanks to the people who put the memorial service together, to our dear friends and colleagues that care for the homeless, whose dedication in advocating for our brothers and sisters who struggle with homelessness is an inspiration to our community. To my dear friends at Urban Pathways and to my peers with Urban Pathways, many of us who know what the journey of homelessness is like. And now many of us are a shining light as to what can happen when a stable, safe, and permanent home is presented to them. For all those who help assist with the setting up of the meeting tonight, and to those who participated, a very heartfelt thank you. One note to Assembly Member Rosenthal, thank you for all you do for us. Someone who's worked in the field for a number of years and has also been homeless myself, your work and your advocacy for all of us is very inspirational. And one of the most important gifts we can give people is hope. And you do that on a daily basis. So we thank you for that. And for all those who took the time from their busy holiday schedules to join us in this memorial service tonight, a very deep and heartfelt thank you. Now, as we depart from the memorial, may we remember that each individual we honored this evening had meaning and a purpose while with us here on earth. Each brother and sister mattered and always will. Let us focus our attention on supporting and caring for our neighbors and friends, wherever and whoever they may be. Let our voices echo in support for our brothers and sisters through advocacy towards our community leaders, elected officials, and our neighbors, that we may once and for all resolve that homelessness ends now. May the joy and peace of the holiday season be with one and all. Let our hearts and souls remember this night and join together as one community to end homelessness once and for all. Thank you.